video, I'm just going to have a little read along of a little gem that I found on Amazon. It's a book that you can purchase in paper copy, hard copy, if you so wish, but you'll be given access to the online PDF version here for free, which is titled Be the One to Execute Your Trust, okay, by a gentleman called David E. Robinson, who is an American, lives in the state of Maine, and it has a website, mainpatriot.com. So, you know, this gentleman, I read through this book and I thought I'm going to share it with you guys, and we can kind of read through this because it just highlights, you know, everything we're trying to do, or, you know, have done, some of us, and what this course is built around in terms of, you know, staying protected, but being able to, you know, live and sleep, is what David Miller said, being able to live and sleep in the world of fact and live and sleep in the world of fiction, and being able to govern our own affairs and administer our own trust. Hence the title of this book, Be the One to Execute Your Trust. Okay, so it's going to really, in particular, pay attention to, you know, the trust law. It's got a few chapters in here around trust law, which is so pivotal to understand truly as to what is going on with their subrogation and their tricks and traps when it comes to making us trustee and making them the beneficiary of the Social Security trust they set up in our name, acting on behalf of the state, and that's what they capture. Okay, so it's all about us, the reason why we're doing what we're doing, to come back to life, have power of attorney over this entity that they set up for our benefit to begin with, but due to the legal tricks and traps, unilateral contracts, you name it, they've kind of subrogated and claimed that back, and then we're pinned as trustees. Trustees always has to perform under the terms and conditions of the trust, which is otherwise your statutes, codes, laws and regulations as part of your bankrupt corporation that we call governments. We're going to have to redefine that. So yeah, we're going to read through this just so, you know, we can help embed it in and revise and really highlight and help you guys understand, you know, where we're at in terms of these roles that we want to play and what's happening with these different roles within trust law, and obviously seeing how trust law is otherwise just contract law, and all law at the end of the day is consent. Okay, so this will really just help hit it home, explain very simply, so you can either, you know, read along with me, or, you know, shove me in your pocket if you listen to me on your phone, and just, you know, follow the audio, because it's going to be very beneficial, and obviously, you know, encourage you guys to read this over multiple times in your own time too. Okay, so Be the One to Execute Your Trust by David E. Robinson. He has got a website there that you can visit as well. So here we go. There is always a remedy. We create our own remedy. No one can do it for us. And it states here, Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay, and this is put in the First Amendment to the Constitution for the United States of America. Now, a lot of what he quotes here obviously is from the United States, but as we know, if you're living in a country where there's a central bank that has indebted your nation, you know you're under exactly the same structure of debt servitude to these international banksters that have captured everything under the commercial system. Okay, so just substitute where you see United States mentioned for the country that you're in, whether it's United Kingdom or the corporation you're in, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, etc. So it says here, the people's credit, we are secured party creditors of the United States. And it says here, quotation, Congress shall have power to borrow money on the credit of the people of the United States. Section 8, Clause 2 of the Constitution for the United States. Okay, so we got here the contents, and we got Chapter 1, Contracts make the law. So it says here, quotations, no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. That's in Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution for the United States. And it goes on to say, contracts make the law. The only way an act of government can be binding on us is if we contract with the government through that act. Contracts make the law. Everything that's going on in the United States, or wherever you are today, is based on the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. We are communists, whether we know it or not. You must change in order to become free. Every member of my world has the power of attorney over himself, over his legal person. He is competent to handle his own affairs. It's all contract. You don't owe them any money unless you contract with them to pay it. No contract, no obligation to perform. For instance, my friend got a speeding ticket and he wrote on the front and back, no contract, no consent, offer refused, and mailed it into the court. If he receives any correspondence from the court, He will write them back and demand that they prove their claim in writing with law references, that his handling of the ticket was wrong. They can't prove that he was conducting commerce at the time of the traffic stop. Our word trumps theirs no matter what is said. As long as we know who and what we are in the law, we cannot lose. If they send me anything in the mail, I will return it, offer refused, within 3 days as per contract law. You have 3 days to refuse any contract offer of any kind. Know who and what you are in the law so that you will know how to handle any situation they present to you. To remove contracts that you know nothing about, rebut their silent presumptions by declaring your true status in the law. And it says here in John chapter 8 verse 32, and the truth shall set you free. Okay, and we obviously, those of you going through the Bill of Exchange module, you can see this is what they have listed in their statutes with the 3 days Laws of Rescission Act. Okay, so we've got 3 days to refuse any contract, after which it becomes binding. And you can see the allegory behind Jesus rising from the dead after 3 days because he reneged the contract of death. He came back to life because he did not consent, and he obviously rescinded that contract and came back to life. So it's kind of like an allegory for that as well. So he carries on. It all begins with knowing who you are. Names are irrelevant. It's the role you play in their game that counts, as we all know by now. It says here, quotation, I'm not a citizen of the United States Corporation. Therefore, I am not an employee of the United States Incorporation, who is subject to the statutes and regulations defined in the IRS code, which apply only to US contract employees. I am man. I was created by God with dominion. The created is subject to the creator and to nothing else. So John Doe, in uppercase and lowercase, was named by his parents. John Doe, all caps, was named by the state. John Doe, uppercase and lowercase, is his lawful name. And John Doe, all caps, is his legal name, his street name, his strawman name, his transmitting utility name issued by the state that allows us to conduct commerce. John's all capitalized legal name is on his record of live birth, on which his birth certificate is based. Nobody knows where it actually is. It's a legal fiction. You have to have a name, but you don't care what name they're calling you by. I am man or woman, as the gender may be. So it goes on to say there are two kinds of law: God's law and man's law, natural law and contract law. John Doe, all caps, is a presumption of man's law. A straw man or man of straw, it is bait. They have to get you to join their game to be under their law. If you don't want to play their game, you don't have to go by their rules. Quotations, he says, I am man and I was created by God with dominion, end quotations. Logic is irrelevant in court. Courts deal in presumptions, which until rebutted stand. Remove their presumptions by rebutting their contracts that really don't exist. It all comes down to intent. No criminal intent, no crime. It's a matter of liability. Who's assuming the liability for the claims that are being made? Contract forms the law. So where is the contract? Who's compelling me to perform in a contract? Provide the evidence that contract exists. Provide the contract that I am being compelled to perform in that all capitalized name. Anything after man is a legal construct. It's a fiction. Do you want the legal person, John Doe, all caps, or do you want the lawful man, John Doe, uppercase, lowercase? There is a difference between these two names, these two persons. Separate the names, for there are two of us. Which capacity do you want me to be in? Question mark. Which role do you want me to play? The role of the man or the legal fiction, the presumption? These are questions cast at the system. They're trying to get you to make joinder and bite that hook to come under their jurisdiction. And you see obviously why we are doing what we're doing when it comes to states protection, right? States correction and asset protection, by playing and designating these roles and recapturing this commercial token piece on the Monopoly board game that we're all on in commerce in order to function and operate in commerce. Okay, we don't want to disregard it. We can't surrender it. We want to take back control of it to allow us to contract with all these legal fictions, but stay protected on the private side. All right, and this is key, and he obviously re-emphasised this. So he goes on, tell me what role you want me to play, and I will, or I won't. It's my choice. We have the choice. So it goes on, chapter 2, Presumptions or facts. Okay, we all know they operate under assumption and presumption. David Miller, Quantum Grammar, proved this with the language. And the judges, it's all under assumption and presumption, trying to get you to contract into their jurisdiction of man-made laws, the legal realm of fictional entities. Okay, so he goes on, he says, the state operates on presumptions, the courts operate on presumptions. What binds me to their presumptions? Where's the contract? What obligations in the contract am I allegedly bound to perform? Did I agree to it? Was the contract valid? Was mutual consideration exchanged? What type of consideration was exchanged? What's in the contract that I'm supposed to perform? Was I aware of the contract? Was the contract fully disclosed? Did I sign the contract with my autograph in wet ink? You know, when you're asking questions, you're acting as king. You break down that word, you know, as king, asking questions, conditional acceptance, you're always staying in honour. You're putting them on the spot. It's always, burden of proof is always on the claimant who's bringing forth the claim, trying to make you joinder to bite the hook. So statutory laws are public servant codes for society's slaves, for employed agents of government. We're all presumed to be employees and servants of the state until we object. We're servants of God, students of the earth, charged with earth's cultivation and care. Remember who you are. So chapter 3, this is really important, guys, to go over these next few chapters about trusts. Okay, once this really hits home and you'll be able to explain this off, you know, the top of your head, and your own 2 feet, you'll see exactly what's been going on. And this will obviously help aid you in the more advanced stages of when it comes to administering your estate, when doing the 1099 process and being able to claim back the credits that have been gifted to us as beneficiaries whenever they, you know, ever since they removed gold and silver, for us to be able to pay our debts. Okay, so this is very, very crucial to understand fully. So chapter 3, trust defined. Definition: trust, noun, a fiduciary relationship regarding property, subjecting the person with title to the property to equitable duties to manage the property for another's benefit. The confidence placed in a trustee, together with the trustee's obligations toward the property for the benefit of the beneficiary. A trust arises as a manifestation of an intent to create it. That's in Black's Law, 7th page 1513. Hence, the Declarations of Independence of 1776 and 2012. A trust involves 3 elements. Okay, you have 1, the trustee, who holds title to the trust property and is subject to equitable duties to manage it for the benefit of another person according to a set plan. 2, the beneficiary to whom the trustee owes equitable duties to manage the trust property for his benefit. 3, trust property, which is held in trust by the trustee for the beneficiary, called the corpus of the trust, or res as well is another term. In the wide sense, a trust exists when property is to be held and administered by one person on behalf of another person according to established terms or for some purpose other than the person's own benefit. In the narrow sense, a trust exists when the creator of the trust hands over or is bound to hand over the control of an asset which is to be administered by another person, the trustee, the administrator in his capacity as such, for the benefit of some person other than the trustee, the beneficiary, or for some impersonal purpose. Okay, so he carries on, chapter 4, the Holy Trinity is trust law. Okay, so we have God's law entails a 3-party contract between our Father, God, who operates through his Spirit, the Holy Ghost, for the benefit of his Son, Jesus the Christ, the earthly grantor of the rights of all mankind. Now these 2 concepts here, guys, are so key to understand, which is why I've highlighted it. Corporate law entails a 3-party contract between the directors, who direct the employees for the benefit of the stockholders. Trust law entails a 3-party contract between the executor, who directs his trustees for the benefit of the beneficiaries. The actions are the same, only the word definitions change for each case. Okay, so as we'll go on in a little bit, you'll see how the governments, all they are is playing trust law with these roles that are going on. Okay, and there's obviously some tricks that they play in order to make us trustee, which you'll be able to see in a second. But once you grasp that concept, read out again, corporate law entails a 3-party contract between the directors, who direct their employees for the benefit of the stockholders. Trust law entails a 3-party contract between the executor, who directs his trustees for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So when you want to start a corporation, you normally have the directors, okay, which otherwise would just be the executives who formulate the business plan and all of the terms and conditions that otherwise will be the corporate charter or the bylaws of that corporation to instruct the employees, which otherwise in trust law would just be the trustees, how to behave, how to act, and how to go about doing their jobs, job descriptions, and fulfilling their roles in order to administer the whole corporate entity, which in the corporate world obviously will be the corporation, but in the trust world it'll be the estate, right? The trust entity itself, on behalf of its stockholders, which otherwise in trust law are just the beneficiaries. Okay, so you can see with the government, we, the people, are the executor. We elect through voting, through the democracy, who should act as public servants, who take an oath of office to serve we the people as trustees, which are otherwise just the employees of the government, the corporation, for our benefit, us as the stockholders and beneficiaries. Okay, but you know, the things that they do, they maneuver these different roles, okay, and get us to be trustees, where we're now under the corporate charter of their statutes, acts, and terms and conditions of the corporation in order to perform for the benefit of them, the state, okay? This will become clearer in a second. So, picture a triangle. Let the triangle represent the Trinity of the Bible, God's law. So you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. You can see the image here, it'll be easy to kind of picture this. Picture the Father at the top of the triangle with his power and grace. Picture the Holy Ghost at the right-hand point at the base, and God's Son at the left-hand point at the base. As you can see here, power flows clockwise from our Father, God, who operates through his Spirit, the Holy Ghost, for the benefit of his Son, Jesus the Christ, who dispenses God's mutually abundant grace to us all. And you can see here how Chief Executive Officer, CEO, in a corporate sense, in a trust sense, it's the executor. Okay, then obviously here you've got the trustee, and then the beneficiary, which will otherwise just be the employees and or the stakeholders, okay? So you've got the Bible is God's last will and testament. A testament is something left by a testator in a will. Okay, there are three parties to a testament, which is a will. You have the executor, the beneficiary, and the trustee, who holds and manages the property in trust for the beneficiary. The trustee is directed by the executor according to the will, which is the constitution of the trust, for the benefit of the beneficiary. The testator created the earth trust and put us in charge as the executors and beneficiaries of his will. What the testator left us is being held and managed by our trustees, supposedly for our benefit. Okay, so when we say we are acting as principal beneficiary, this is otherwise you can replace principal for executor. Okay, so principal, beneficiary, executor / beneficiary. This is where we're coming in at. This is always the roles we want to be playing within trust law and contract law. And obviously there's a few other roles and other hats that we can don on the commercial side when it comes to secured party creditor, also an authorized representative. But as you'll see, there's many different kind of terms for the same kind of roles that we want to be playing that otherwise shows on paper and within the system that we're operating on the right side in relation to our strawman entity, our corporate selves. So he has chapter 5, trust law applied. Okay, so according to trust law, the executor and the beneficiary cannot be a trustee, and a trustee cannot be the executor or the beneficiary. So there must be that separation. The trustee must follow the terms of the trust. The executor and beneficiary establishes the terms of the trust. The executor gives directives to the trustees according to the terms of the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Government employees are our public servants who are supposed to be trustees of the public trust, but they are not. They hold and manage all public property for the benefit of the state instead of for the benefit of the people, you and I. So in court, if they send you to jail, it's because you were seen as a trustee who had been ordered to do something for a beneficiary that you did not do. You can't be a trustee and a beneficiary at the same time. Somebody else was supposed to get a benefit that they did not get because of what you did not do as a trustee in this case. When you walk into court, you are presumed by the court to be the trustee of your strawman's estate. The judge is acting as the executor because he is the one in power who executes the alleged directives of the trust. The executor gives the orders and the beneficiary is presumed to be the state. You are presumed to be the trustee who takes orders from the state through the judge and must be obedient to those orders and to the state. The executor is the person in power, the person in charge. Okay, so you've got a breakdown here of the de facto way where power flows from the executor, which is the judge, down through to the presumed trustee, which is your straw man, okay, which is what they get you to make joinder to play out that role, to take you from God's law, natural law, under the maritime admiralty world of commerce for the benefit of the state, okay, which you can see here is otherwise the beneficiaries. So the lawyer for the defense has not properly contracted you with the court, whether you know it or not. Lawyers are trained to obey the judge as though he were king of the court. Lawyers operate on the presumption that the judge is the executor and administrator of John's trust estate. Lawyers allow the court to proceed on the false presumption that the judge is the executor and administrator of John's estate, and that the state is the beneficiary of John's trust instead of John, and that John is a trustee who must take orders from the state. As the presumed trustee, John is liable for his lawyer's actions in the case instead of his lawyer himself. His lawyer has no commitment to John. His oath is to the bar as the British agent of the crown that he is. Constitutions are irrelevant in court. Okay, so when you come in as principal beneficiary, a CEO, an executive beneficiary to your trust estate, you are the judge. You are the master. This is my court. The court is the paper. And you direct them as the public servants as they are as trustee to administer your estate and close and set the account, whatever it is they're trying to bring charges against your straw man. Okay, and this is why it's very powerful. Again, flogging a dead horse, state's correction, making sure we're taking on these roles, secured party creditor, principal beneficiary, okay, authorized representative, agent to our straw man, etc., etc. Many ways you could do this in order to put up that screen to show them that you are not the trustee, they are. There's no way they can subrogate, okay, and that's otherwise what they do for all these hidden tricks and traps and contracts, implied and expressed. So it shows here the de jure way, okay, how it should be, and it will be once you get your papers in order and your state is corrected. Power flows from the executor, which is our straw man, John, ourselves, our corporate selves, right, through his public trustees, which is the state, for the benefit of John, the beneficiary, which is living men and women, us. His defence lawyer never tells John that he swore a prior oath to the court and the British Crown. So when it comes to enforcement, the sheriff is the highest authority in his county. It is his sworn duty to make sure that the state's trustees do their jobs as they are ordered by their constituents to do. The sheriff should hold the trustees of your trust estate to account. If they don't do what you order them to do, they are in breach of trust because you are the executor of your trust estate. You are the one to execute your trust. This is the thing, you have all the power. And once you come to learn all of the postal road mechanics, how to properly fill out your documents for the stamps, become a postmaster, etc., there's going to be nothing that can stop you unless you have actually done harm to another individual soul and infringed on the rights, life, liberty and property, okay? So it's so very powerful once you kind of comprehend this concept of you being the power piece in commerce, you having full control as a sui juris to administer your own estate for trust planning purposes. And every notice you receive from these guys is otherwise just an offer to contract. You refuse for cause or accept for value, return to sender, do all these things. Give me the evidence of a valid contract. You're a third party interloper. I do not give you permission to make a legal determination about me or the entity you're trying to accost. Fuck off, basically. Okay, you have all the power. It's all in the pen. The pen is far mightier than the sword in this sense. The pen, people underestimate the power of the pen and what goes on in these four corners, right, which is the court, which I know a lot of you guys know by now, but it's just good to re-emphasize and really hit this home and just dig deep and just know that you have sole authority over this legal fiction they've created and over these guys who've taken an oath of office to serve as your public servants. Remind them of that fact. It's up to us, to enforce that, stand on our own 2 feet, know who we are under God, not under man's legal system of legal fictions, ens legis, straw man entities. They're great, very beneficial to have and own with all the licenses that allows us to operate in commerce, but we must not be tricked into thinking that is us. We must have that separation through these roles that we play. So contracts make the law. Trust law is the highest there is. Trust law equals God's law, equals the Trinity. They cannot violate trust law. So rebut their presumptions with the truth. He goes on to say in trust law, the executor hires and appoints trustees to carry out his orders according to the terms of the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries of the trust. In corporate law, the director hires and appoints employees to carry out his directions according to the charter of the corporation for the benefit of the stockholders of the corporation. What we have forgotten or have never been taught, in civil law, we the people, as executors, elect and appoint our government officials, our trustees, to carry out our orders according to the constitutions for the United States of America and the States, or wherever you are in the world. And so here, just to re-emphasize, you've got John, the executor, which is our corporate selves, directing the trustees, being able to contract with them in the corporate world as public trustees for the benefit of us, we the living people, the shareholder and beneficiary. This is your three-party trust estate. So it goes on, chapter 6, trust explained. It is not difficult to understand trusts. Trusts are simply corporations in disguise. Your earthly estate is a trust. God made you the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of your trust estate, whether you know it or not. Your public power flows clockwise to your strawman, the executor at your trust estate right at the top, through your public employees, who are the administrative trustees of your trust estate, back to you, the shareholder, the beneficiary of your trust estate. Your government employees should be the trustees of your trust estate, transmitting power to you, the beneficiary of your trust estate, from your strawman. Your government employees are supposed to administer your trust estate according to God's plan for your benefit as the beneficiary of God's will, the New Testament Word of God, expressed in the Declaration of Independence of 1776 and the Constitution for the United States of America of 1787 and 91. But the federal government made a switcheroo, a bait and switch, by reversing the roles, by enticing you to accept unilateral contracts with them without your knowledge or consent. Okay, so he breaks down, a unilateral contract is where party A makes a conditional offer to party B to do something if B should accept the offer, where A says to B, if you'll do such and such a thing, I will do this. A makes a conditional offer, but asks for nothing in return except for you to meet that condition. A makes an offer seeking a unilateral contract with B in return. B can choose to accept this offer by simply meeting the condition that is offered. B must accept the offer by performing the conditional act. No promise is asked for, only performance of the act. At no point does B need to perform. If B chooses not to respond and does nothing, then no contract is made. But if B meets the condition of the offer, the agreement is confirmed and both parties are now bound by the contract terms. So when we accept a privilege or benefit offered by the government, we join the government and become bound to their statutes and laws. Each of us is unknowingly made the trustee of a trust that the federal government established in our name when we were born and granted to itself without our knowledge or consent. Okay, so you can see here, this is really important, guys. The whole reason why they set up our Social Security trust funds, set to KB trusts, as you'll see. So you've got power flows from the public servants. Okay, this is what's going on when you haven't woken up, come back to life, the status correction, and being a sui juris, knowing what's going on, how to handle your own affairs, minister your own estate. Power flows from the public servants at the top there, through as executors, they're directing you, John, okay, the presumed public trustee for the benefit of the state, of the New World Order beneficiary of the trust. Okay, so this is how they get you, it's how they capture you in order to perform and come under constant debt servitude with the monetary system they've got set up, pledging you as collateral for all the debt in the system, replacing securities as substance for collateral for debt, and they're securitizing you, which is linched and latched on to your sweat equity, your very life force, your very being, your body, which you consider the vessel. Okay, so it's so important to come out of this trap that they got us in under trust law. So it says here, it explains, which I've got highlighted, as the grantor of this trust, the federal government made the state the beneficiary of the trust in your stead and called it the John Doe Social Security Trust, as numbered in conjunction with your name, which holds and manages your property in trust for the benefit of the state instead of for you. So you can see why they've had to create this straw man in order for them to claim that they are you, in order to reap all the benefits off the back of your very life force of you being here and gaining access to your unlimited exemption, your unlimited credits, where everything's prepaid, because they've taken away our ability to pay in lawful money, which is backed by gold and silver. And so it's very cunning what they have done. To be fair, I'm going to put my hats off to them, because it requires a lot of organization and persistence in that management of administering this fraud on the people. It's insane. But it's so easy once the penny drops for you guys to come back to life and start playing the correct roles and realize that this entity that they set up is actually for our benefit. It's for our ability to operate in commerce, to play the monopoly ball game that we're all on and reap the benefits, and pin them to be the public servants and trustees that they've taken an oath of office to serve. That can only be done when you have your papers corrected. So all of this exists on paper. It's a two-dimensional realm of fiction contracts and entities, but we must learn how to play it. So he carries on here. However, there is a way to separate from them and become free. And this is in 2 Corinthians 6:17. Affirm the truth of your status and come out from among them and be separate. Rebut their presumptions and be free. It's, again, just emphasizing the Bible's telling us you need to come back to life. You've got to, send in your papers, rebut their presumptions and assumptions, and tell them who you are in this world, what roles you're going to take on and play. As he says, you should be the one to execute your trust. You should be the executor, grantor, shareholder, administrator, beneficiary of your trust estate. Your government servants should be the trustees who have to take orders from you and be in obedience to you, the real executor of your trust. In other words, the role of the trustee in your trust was changed from your government servants to you, and the role of the beneficiary in your trust was changed from you to your government servants and the state, for the benefit of the state, without your knowledge or consent. The federal government usurped your role as the executor, administrator, director, shareholder, beneficiary of your trust estate and made you the trustee of your trust estate, who must take orders from the state instead of from God. What is the significance of this bait and switch, you may ask? Well, it's simply this. Instead of you being the beneficiary of your trust estate, the state made your government servants and the state the beneficiaries of your trust estate instead. As the presumed trustee of the public trust, you have been forced to follow the orders of the presumed executor of the public trust and to think that you are a servant of the state instead of them until you rebut their presumptive claim. Okay, we'll follow a few more chapters and then the rest of it, because a lot of what's in the end of this book is a lot of maxims. Okay, maxims and laws are very important. Okay, but there's so much gold dust in this book that just, again, helps highlight those of you who've gone through the course or, still working through the course for everything that we're doing, and just gives more weight and backing and importance behind why, and salience behind why we're doing what we're doing, right? Okay, so it's a really good revisionary aid. I highly recommend at least printing off or buying the hard copy off Amazon, getting the hard copy off Amazon and just going through it. Okay, so once this is like in the back of your hand, there's no stopping you. As long as you've got your papers in order and you're expressing that, what you know on paper correctly, through all the proper protocols with the stamps, how to autograph, how to write your letters, you will be safeguarded and you've got nothing to worry about and stress in this life with what they wanted to try and contract people in. So at the end of the day, it's all universal law. There is universal law that governs this time matrix that they know they have to respect. This is why they work tediously and spend trillions upon trillions on trying to get us to, fall into these contracts with them and give away our consent, sell our soul, so to speak. Okay, and they obviously spend a lot of money on the mind control, programming, dumbing us down, the fluoride in the water, the chemtrailing, you name it. I mean, you guys know they do a lot in order to try and keep us down, dumbed down for us not to come back to life and discover this, but it's too late. There's many cracks that are appearing, and this is what we're here to do. Claim back what is rightfully ours that go bestowed to us as sovereigns, as guardians, of the cosmos. And from here, the sky really is the limit. Those on the path be very surprised if you come into the knowledge as to who we actually are and what we're capable of, which is quite incredible. It's godlike. It is godlike when we're truly back to where we are meant to be when we were first created. we're a long way from home, put it that way, but we're on our way back for sure. Okay, it's all a game of snakes and ladders, so make sure you're always landing on the ladder squares and not the snake squares, and you'll be fine. So chapter 7, he goes on your road to freedom. Every phase of our lives operates in commerce. You need your straw man to operate in commerce. Your straw man has a license to operate in commerce, i.e. driver's license, marriage license, handgun license, occupational license, building permits, etc. A license is good as long as you want it to be, by your permission. When there is a fine for misuse of your license, you need to learn how to then switch the straw man to the living soul with the right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. The straw man is a transmitting utility. Okay, it's such a key concept. Read up the definition. The straw man is a transmitting utility that allows you to operate in commerce with a license to conduct your commercial affairs. How do you play a game of Monopoly? What do you need on that board game to identify you to take part in that game? The token, right? Everyone chooses a token. That token is otherwise what? A transmitting utility in order for you to be able to play the Monopoly board game. Okay, so that's what your straw man is. It's just a token that allows you to operate on that board game of commerce. Now, imagine if you're playing a Monopoly board game and every time you land on that rent or someone else's property or fine you got to pay or you're going to go to jail, that you as a physical being actually accept and believe that you have to fork out money in your own bank account that you worked hard for, actually have to go to prison. You'd think you're fucking nuts. You'd just laugh, right? Well, this is exactly the system they got set up. Okay, just blow it up into the bigger world, the grand scheme of things. That's exactly what's going on. They're trying to convince everyone that their token piece is them. They're gonna have to cough up every time they have to pay with these fictional fucking fiat currency notes. That's all it is. That's what Monopoly money is. There's probably just as much value in Monopoly money in terms of the paper value as what they're printing in the cash notes that we receive, the fiat debt note currencies, right? So the importance is to realise that it's just a game, and once you have everything in the right position with the roles you're playing and your paperwork sent in correctly, you know that you can just pack up the board game at the end of the day and have everything discharged, and none of it's going to transmit onto you, the living being, where you won't have to pay for any of it and have to suffer the consequences of the game. Okay, so let's just read that again. The straw man is a transmitting utility that allows you to operate in commerce with a license to conduct your commercial affairs. If you think you are that token piece, then you become a sole trader. You become a sole proprietorship. You sell your soul. You must come back to being a secured party creditor, authorized representative, postmaster, executor beneficiary, principal beneficiary, and all these other roles, right? In order to separate you, chief executive officer, from this token piece. And that will be respected. They do respect that in commerce. Right, so anyone operating in commerce without a license is committing a commercial crime. You and I need to learn how to become the administrator or agent for the straw man and conduct all of his or her commercial affairs without getting personally involved. All crimes are commercial and are then regulated by commercial courts. Commercial crimes are murder, stealing, dealing in illegal drugs, prostitution, practicing law, or making a legal determination without the permission or consent by assent of any party to a contract. All commerce is ruled by contracts. All courts, tribunals, are ruled by contracts. Absent a contract, the court, tribunal will unlawfully proceed to write a contract under cause, case, number, such and such. Every court summons I've had deal with traffic offences, debt collection, etc., taxes, I've been able to successfully rebut by just simply sending in on my paper who I am and the roles I'm playing and getting them to cease and desist, because I am the court. I'm the judge. I make my own judgment. I execute my own trust. Thank you very much. They're third-party interlopers. Do not give them any permission to make a legal determination about me or the entity they're accosting, because I am the owner of that entity they're trying to accost and get me to joinder with. And so it's so simple. Once you keep a record of everything you do, the courts only have the court's power only lies in their records and their registrations. Okay, and this is why it's so important that what we're learning with self-registration process, acting as our own postmaster, setting up our own court of office, and we become our own authority and our own judge that can issue judgments upon them too, just as they do to us. We're not accepting it. We always rebut, send them back their claim with a counterclaim within 3 days, law of rescission. Okay, so it's very powerful. I've not had any issues with dealing with courts. So just, again, now the foreign vessels in dry dock, the foreign corporations that wanted to try and contract with me through the straw man, and they can't once you come back to life. And they will test you. It is an initiation, but after a while, they realise that you aren't just copying and pasting what you've learned online. You actually do embody the sovereign spirit of a sui juris, knowing how to administer your own affairs in your estate, and then you can tell them to bugger off. Obviously, politely and honourably on paper, saying all the right things, doing all the right things, okay? So he goes on to say here, for example, will the defendant rise? What is your name? When you're in court, stating your name is the signature for the contract. This is how they get you to suck into accepting the contract. How do you plead? Making a plea is giving the court subject matter jurisdiction, which becomes part of the consideration for the contract. All the arguments comprise the offer for the contract, and the judgment initiates the acceptance of the contract by you. The court takes a complaint, turns it into a charge against the straw man, tries him or her on the charge, and then the judgment is rendered, which is a civil action, a claim which must then be accepted by the living soul to make it valid. Your acceptance makes the contract. You accept the judgment in two ways, by your silence or by your signature. When you sign the judgment, or by admitting that you stand under the judgment, or by appealing the judgment to a higher court, a third party, who will then agree with the judgment that you already accepted by making an appeal. Why would you argue laws or codes, rules, regulations, procedures, statutes, when the contract already makes the law in your case by your self-confession? The redemption process of acceptance for value can otherwise then authorise the payment for the judgment. The judgment should be signed by the clerk of the court, for he or she is the court. In most cases, the judge will sign the judgment hoping that you will accept the contract by one of the first two ways, by silence or signature, or an eventual appeal to a third party. Another response is to reject the contract under truth in lending within 72 hours. Also, when the contract concerns mortgages, under Regulation Z and truth in lending. Always remember, everything is in commerce and is ruled by contracts. Codes, rules, regulations, procedures, and statutes apply only to the corporation that they were written for. You do not argue codes, rules, regulations, or statutes in commerce. You argue contracts. No contract, no case. There is no contract with a policeman, government official, federal agent, or federal agency, even when you have a license. A government or corporation is a fiction that cannot sign a contract or enforce a contract unless you join their corporation as an employee and argue their rules, codes, regulations, and or procedures, which argument they then use to enforce a contract you unwittingly made. Commerce and contracts, that's all there is. Okay, so chapter 8, corporations and contracts, goes on to say, my new motto is no more, and no more. As in, no more, gain the knowledge and say no more, not putting up with this anymore. It's time to understand what's really going on and to open our eyes and take our country back. And the best way to do this is to hit them where it hurts in their financial statements. What is the most effective way to make others change? Change your behaviour towards them. If you want a child to stop being mean, you simply tell that child that until he plays nice, you won't play with him anymore. If that child needs you, he will quickly change his ways. So, we tell the police departments, county sheriff offices, states and the feds that they aren't playing by the rules of full disclosure, so we won't play with them anymore. They're not cute little children. They're giant corporations that have nothing to do with lawful government. They have nothing to do with lawful government anymore, and that's the point. America, wherever you are, hasn't been a sovereign nation with lawful government in more than a century. It's been longer here in the United Kingdom. I think it's been over 3 centuries now. Some might argue that there never has been lawful governments, but every man is independent of all laws except laws prescribed by nature. And it says here, man is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow man without his consent. And that's in the court case, Cruden versus Neal in 1796. So the key phrase here is without his consent. You must voluntarily give your consent to enter into any contract with these corporations. The state declares they are a state, and this is true, but what is a state? The state of Maine is a subcorporation of the United States, which is a corporation operating in commerce for a profit instead of for the welfare of the people. Now some may ask, so what if they operate as a corporation? Well, if they operated as a not-for-profit corporation and the stockholders were we the people, then that might be okay. But the fact remains that every municipality, school district, public works, state or federal agency in the United States is a corporation operating for profit, and you and I are not the stockholders. Just replace your country, wherever you are in the world, this is going on. These corporations are privately held companies that operate for a profit. Think about that for a minute. The entity we call government is actually a corporation, a foreign corporation that is not owned by we the people. Who makes the corporations responsible to the people? Do they watch themselves and never harm anyone? Of course they don't. We have to sue whatever company because they knew that their tires, for instance, an example here, we have to sue XYZ company because they knew that their tires were causing hundreds of deaths. But XYZ company didn't want to take responsibility because the bottom line was more important to them than human life. This is that short-termist philosophy, right, of capitalism with planned obsolescence too. It's all about how can I stay in power for the next 2 or 3 years, 4 years? How can I you do that if you appease the corporations and pass laws that benefit the other private corporations, right, at the expense of we the people? Once the system went into corporate status, it ceased to be a government. Prior to the system becoming a corporation, no one ever had to register to vote. Now they claim that everyone must be registered. This is not true. Try it sometime. Go down to vote in a local election in which you are an inhabitant of that area, but are not registered to vote. Tell them that it is your right to vote and that you don't have to be registered. Most likely you'll be allowed to vote, but they may not be very friendly towards you. You may be asking, doesn't registered simply mean signed up? Well, not quite. When you register yourself, you record formally and exactly in a list or the like. Sounds innocent enough. Now, whom do you register with? With the registrar. A registrar is an officer who has custody of and is in charge of maintaining a registry or register. Some examples of registries are registries of copyrights, deeds, wills, motor vehicles, and patents. These all have to do with personal property, not people. Other registries such as of births, deaths, marriages, voter registrations, college registrations, and the like all have to do with registering natural people. Now we are really going to take a forward leap. What really is a registry? Generally, a registry applies to vessels in foreign commerce, whereas enrollment refers to coastwise navigation. When we register ourselves, we're saying that we are vessels in foreign commerce. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? This is why our names are in all capital letters on all of the various registrations, military, voting, birth certificates, death certificates, credit cards, etc. This essay presumes that you have an understanding of the all capitalized fictional name versus proper names whose first letters only are capitalized. All vessels or ships have capitalized names. And those of you who've done the seals, emblems and crest module, you can see that. Give examples of these ships that are all capitalized. Everything is otherwise just modeled off of maritime practices of the flag, law of the flag. After registering, we are no longer dealt with as natural living souls, but as vessels operating in foreign commerce. And of course, Regis is otherwise king or the crown. And obviously when you register anything, you're basically given the title and rights away to the crown. That's another, really potent definition and what's going on there with when you register with anyone outside of yourself, which is why, again, bringing it back to the importance of understanding the post-road mechanics so we can register and keep hold of our title and rights of anything we register ourselves and record ourselves at our own dock, if that makes sense, if the documents we use, okay, and the addresses are foreign vessels in dry dock, okay, so in that case, we can basically, when we use their post-road mechanics, which are just shipping lanes, postcodes or port codes, we become the master or the captain of our vessels, okay, which can't be pillaged or salvaged because we are maintaining a tight ship in that sense, with managing all of our affairs, effectively administering the ship, which is our estate. Okay, so again, all of this can just tie over with different descriptions, different terminologies, like the corporate trust example of trust positions. The ship's no different. You'll be the captain. You have the workers of your ship, be the trustees, and then the beneficiaries would be those who are benefiting from, the ship service, which is, whatever it is that you do with your affairs in life. So we have, what's the foreign commerce in which we are operating? Corporate commerce. Corporations are foreign to natural beings and cannot do business with them. We enter their jurisdiction to do business with them when we are viewed as vessels because we are registered as such. A vessel is a fiction, just as a corporation is a fiction. The two fictions are now capable of mutually transacting business. This all ties in with the flag law many of us have been studying. Many people for years have said that we are now under maritime law and suggested that we study maritime admiralty law for court. After all, the flag flown in all of the courts is a military flag. Therefore, the law they are advertising by that flag is admiralty. So we are viewed as vessels because we registered as such. We are all vessels in the sea of commerce, in all courts are commercial courts for commercial fictions, not lawful common law courts for real people. Okay, now we are a vessel. A vessel enters contracts with other vessels under the law of the flag. If we don't like the laws their flag represents, then we should not contract with that other vessel. The flag is your warning of what laws will have control of the contract. Now, back in actual maritime, it still goes on today, flags are used as communication to other vessels as to where they're from, their jurisdiction, and what it is their intent is. Okay, so this is how they used to communicate before we had radio, and it's still in practice today, even within our court systems and our paper contracts and procedures. And the buildings, you see, wherever there's a flag being flown, you know it's under maritime law. They've just raised the fictional seas up and over the land and brought these ensigns and flagpoles onto the land in order to show and broadcast what jurisdiction this land is under, or what what part of the seas you're kind of sailing as you're jumping in your vessel from this vessel into your corporate vessel on the car, called a car, traveling along the shipping lanes, etc., from one foreign vessel to another. All right, it's all laws of the sea, laws of the road. And this is why, it's so important to know these things so you don't become joinder to being treated as an enemy of the state, a pirate, So yeah, it's so important to know. Okay, now we are a vessel. A vessel enters contracts with other vessels under the law of the flag. If we don't like the laws their flag represents, then we should not contract with that other vessel. The flag is your warning of what laws will have control to the contract. When you submit a contract, which is itself a vessel, where is your flag? If your contract does not display a flag, then you are tacitly submitting to the laws of their flag, but you say there is no flag displayed on their contract. Right and wrong. There is no flag on the face of the contract, but there is a flag somewhere in their building or in front of their building. Every bank displays a United States flag, not an American flag. Most large corporations have the corporate United States flag and the corporate state flag and their company's own corporate flag flying in front of their buildings. Guys, this is why it's so important to get your seals done. Get a coat of arms with your family seal of your court of office where you're doing business, so that's going to be recognised in commerce under your declaration of your estate as to what you stand by. What is your terms and conditions in this life? What are your values? This is why it was so prevalent back in the day when people actually were sui juris and could administer their own affairs and their own estate as part of the family. And this is where our power is, and this is why we put it on our documents, on our envelopes too. And you can even fly the flag or have it embroidered in your building, outside your building, at your gates. And this is what these sui juris people used to do, and the ones that are still living, the private life and know about all these things are doing too. Past these houses, I expect you've seen them, they still have their coat of arms out, or their flag that's flown. It's rare, but you do see them. These are the people that know how to contract with other foreign vessels, okay? Especially in the States. So haven't you ever wondered why big corporations have their own flags? These represent the codes, rules and regulations that govern their contracts. My neighbour's kids' college is a good example. All three flags fly right in front of the Bible building. For goodness sake, it's astounding how they disclose their intentions and we haven't a clue as to what's really going on. Again, someone will most likely ask, what is wrong with these flags? Good question, big answer. These flags are not corporations that abide by rules, codes and regulations, not laws. These flags are for corporations that abide by rules, codes and regulations, not laws. Allow me an analogy. What corporate name pops into your head when I tell you to think of a large corporation? Okay, keep that big 500 club name in mind during the following analogy. Here's the analogy. It goes on to say, after 4 grueling interviews with multiple tests, you finally land that job at the big company. The boss sends you down to human resources to fill out paperwork. One of the forms you must sign is an acknowledgement form for an employee handbook that states that you have received, understand, and will abide by the rules, codes and regulations of the corporation. Some of those rules will deal with dress code, tobacco usage, protocols, harassment, sick time, vacation pay, and even disciplinary actions. Excitedly, you sign the acknowledgement contract and start work bright and early Monday morning. You are in your finest suit with shoes polished, and it's a real good hair day. I and your best friend show up to take you out for a celebration lunch. I work for myself, though doing landscaping, and I'm in my usual attire, overalls, t-shirt and work boots. This outfit doesn't meet the standards of the company's dress code, and your co-workers look at me kind of funny, but I do not work for this company, nor did I agree to abide by its dress code, so they cannot tell me how to dress because they have no jurisdiction, no contract with me. Now, you must understand the government is no more than a private corporation. They have corporate codes, rules and regulations for the corporate employees, just as that big 500 company did in our analogy. Since these codes are not laws, why does everyone follow them as if they were the law? Why does the corporate government think you must follow their codes, rules and regulations? The reason is because you say that you are an employee. You state that you're an employee of the United States every time you file a form 1040 with the IRS, as that form is only for government employees, or tax return no matter where you are. And obviously all these other forms where you tick, I'm a citizen, I'm white, I'm everything but a living sovereign man or woman. So the IRS takes you at your word and treats you as an employee. The same is true for state taxation forms. You also assert that you are a United States corporate employee every time you answer yes to the question, are you a United States citizen, or wherever you are. How many times have we done that? Maybe 20 or more. Think of all of the forms you have signed that ask that very question. Passports, driving license, job applications, school registrations, credit card applications, bill forms, the list is endless. United States corporate citizens are subject to all of the codes, rules and regulations of the company. If you claim national citizenship, please remember that America or your state is the nation to claim, not the United States corporation. I mean, the Americans, they make it so obvious, obviously under 28 US Code 3002 subsection 15A, it says United States is otherwise a federal corporation. But an easy way to find out with anyone else around the world, which here the United Kingdom is a little bit more kind of covert and clandestine, is just simply seeing the national debt and who they owe that debt to. If it's a central bank, if you look, that central bank would be privately owned, which is otherwise then the same shareholders of that privately owned bank would also own the IMF and the World Bank, who is otherwise overseen as creditors to the debtors of every nation that they've indebted, which are under their servitude, which is bankruptcy law, which is maritime law. Okay, and obviously then they push forward all these restricting laws, communistic laws, in order to put on the burden of this debt onto the people through, income tax, and signing up to all these roles in order to fulfill the trusteeship of the corporate charter that the big banks, the international creditors, twisted the arms of the governments in order to do on their behalf. And this is why we haven't got governments anymore. It's all just otherwise sub-corporations for the international banksters in order to pledge all the citizens that come in through the stock of the corporation, manufacturing babies, right? And then pledging them as collateral for all the debt, which then allows them to draw out new credit lines off the back of that new life that's come in under that corporation, because they do actuary models based on demographics, the family, your potential for wealth generation, and paying off interest on debts where they try to indebt you every fucking way you go. Mortgages, everything else is otherwise this extending of credit so they can charge you interest on that. And that's what's only ever really paid off. And that's what ends up trickling back to line the pockets of the international banksters, whilst the principal is always going up and up and up, which is why you always see the national debt increasing. The debt ceiling is always being increased because there is never enough money in circulation to pay off the principal plus the interest. And they all create money from account with zero balance. Okay, and this he'll highlight some of this in a second, but it's so important to realise, once what's happening with the legal side of things, with the roles they're getting us to play, with the subrogation under this trust law and this corporate franchise, and intermingle that with the money aspect of, coming away from substance and into securities, where they're pledging the people's collateral. You can see how they both come together in order to set up this whole farming of humans from cradle to grave simply through debt servitude and playing roles that aren't godly. They're taking us away from God, taking us away from ourselves. getting us all to perform under their fraud. It's the biggest scam ever. And it's a pyramid scheme. Like any pyramid scheme, will come to an end. The writing is on the walls. I'm surprised it's lasted this long, but it'd be interesting. But there's we can't wait for anyone else outside ourselves. We must be the ones that want to implement this change. That's why we're going to come back to life, take back control, and stand up. It's we the people, as a real man, as a real woman, to take back control and stop and correct the system, and stand up for yourself, and stop playing the game, and stop benefiting from it. So, United States corporate citizens are subject to all of the codes, rules, and regulations of the company. If you claim national citizenship, please remember that America or your state is the nation to claim, not the United States corporation. Personally, this right as an inhabitant of Maine, my citizenship is not of this earth. When we can claim our residence is in heaven, we're just here paying a visit. That's what you can put down in your declaration. You're staying in the territory, the land of, say, whatever the county you're in, okay? And then you can see, but your primary residence is in heaven. That's eternal. Everything down here is in death. It's the temporal realm. It decays based on the things that have been done in this harmonic universe. We want to be back to where we were originally created, which is, a bit higher up in the dimensional scales of all existence, where we have got eternal bodies that are semi-etheric. So we can put that down on paper, which means that, relinquish owning things down here, because it's all going to decay anyway. We're just here to help with this transmutation of, bioregenesis that's going on with all of humanity and all the life forms here, in order to pull ourselves back up, to bring heaven on earth, to bring earth up back to heaven, raising, ascending, right? So you get, full license when you understand these things of where you're claiming to be, where you're claiming to reside. If you're residing within their postal network, not in care of, then you're enjoinder to their network, and you're benefiting from their services, which then makes you fall under their jurisdiction again. So it's even putting out the addresses and stuff, it's so important to have that separation, putting in brackets, four corners rule, etc. So the bottom line is, it continues, the bottom line is that when we are dealing with corporations, we're dealing with contracts. And there's the case Erie Railroad versus Tompkins. Just so I did not have a contract with the big 500 company and did not have to adhere to its dress code, I don't have a contract with the United States corporation, so I don't have to adhere to their employees' codes. Everything is by contract. Even the courts are corporations and operate by contract. Everything offered to you, either verbally or in writing, is a new offer of contract. Think about these examples and start noticing how many times each day you get offers to contract. A traffic ticket, a parking ticket, a code enforcement violation for your yard not being mowed, a building permit, a jury duty notice, a notice or bill for property taxes, a bill to register your car, a notice or bill for state or federal taxes, a notice from your bank or credit card company that there will be higher charges for late payments, etc. The list is eternal, because everything between you and a corporation is an offer to contract. The good news is that all contracts can be accepted or rejected. Within a 72-hour period under the Truth in Lending Act, you can reject any offer to contract. This includes rescinding contracts that you have accepted, then have, for whatever reason, changed your mind about accepting it. What happens when a police officer pulls you over and gives you a ticket? Do you have a choice as to whether or not you are going to sign that ticket? Of course not. Do you even have a choice as to how you're going to sign the ticket? No, not anymore. My brother Steve was stopped last week, and he called me to ask how he should sign the ticket. Steve was ready when the police officer returned and handed him the ticket, but the officer told Steve to sign his name and only his name. Wow. Forced contracts under threat, duress and coercion. Is this the land of the free or what? It's decision time. If we start rejecting all offers of contract that demand money out of our pockets, we will hit them where it hurts. And this is very important, guys, coming up. Eventually, they will have no choices but to shut their doors, as would any business whose sales have dropped off. The only difference between the corporate government and your local five and dime is that you actually get something in return for your money at the local five and dime. This is so important, guys, so pay attention to this. For those of you that still believe we have to support our government through taxation, I simply point you to Ronald Reagan's Grace Commission report of 1984, where he states 100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt and by federal transfer payments. In other words, all individual income tax revenues are gone before one nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government. This country operates today on the same sources of revenue as it did prior to the income tax, duties or imposts on imported goods and excise taxes on domestic goods that are non-essential items. This is all the revenue required to run the government. There's supplies everywhere when this is going on. The next standard objection is a book in itself and requires a good deal of research to understand, but I want to try to briefly answer one more objection that most people of good moral character will raise in regards to the federal debt. Guys, if you want to watch a good documentary, I'm just going to show you Money Masters, okay? And this is going to help really emphasize what's going on with the money. Okay, it's a 3.5 hour documentary. Just type in Money Masters. If you guys want to, the rise of the bankers, integrate everything that we just kind of went through and read through and watch this documentary. It'll go hand in hand and you'll get a really good idea as to the players and the timeline of events that unfolded even in the United Kingdom with the establishment of the City of London and the Bank of England, and then obviously the takeover of America clandestinely through the Crown and what was going on during that time. This is an excellent documentary that these guys did to kind of piece it all together. So I highly recommend you go away and watch that. So he continues here. Don't we all have to pay our debts? Well, if this were an honest debt that you or I incurred and agreed to pay, then by all means the answer would be an overwhelming yes. However, that is not the case for the federal debt or wherever you are in the world. Okay, the federal debt, the national debt, is whatever nation state you're in, corporation, again, a privately held company that artificially created this outrageous debt out of nothing and then made you and I believe we were responsible to pay their debts for them. Debt is what the corporate owners created out of nothing and lent back to their sub-corporations. It's not even a real debt, it's fraud, which coincidentally stands for Federal Reserve Accounting Unit Denominations. If that big 500 company, from our analogy, came to you and said, hey, we need your help in getting rid of our debt, you may feel a modicum of sympathy for that corporation, but would you pay their debts for them? No way. Then why are you paying this private company's artificial and fraudulent debt simply because they titled their corporation, United States or wherever you reside? The corporate government is nothing more than a pyramid scheme leeching off of the hard-working, productive sector today. Back to our new motto, just say, no more. So I'll let you guys read this in your own time. It goes on and says, contract story 1, etc., which kind of just gives, some testimonies as to some people's successes with, applying these things that he's talked about in terms of rebutting their assumptions, presumptions, refusing the contract, accepting for value. All right, which is just to finish off. I'm just going to read through some of this briefly, and then because the rest of the document is pretty much all about maxims of law and the redemption process. Okay, just really re-emphasising what's going on in the courts and the things that we can rely on when it comes to understanding truly the maxims of law and the precedents that have been set from that under case law that will help kind of protect us on the private side. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but that's otherwise a really good read to do in your own time to go through. Obviously, in the module, there is a module that I put in other maxims of law as well, so you can complement that with what is otherwise listed down here. So he subcategorizes them into certain subjects, which is really good and handy to have. Like for instance, show you here. So you got, so like common sense, consent and contracts, court and pleas, court appearance, crime and punishment. Okay, so it's kind of customs and usages. It's kind of indexed, which is really good. Expression in words, fictions, fraud and deceit, God and religion. Okay, and I've highlighted a few good ones that kind of resonate with me, but feel free to obviously highlight any more that you wish that speaks to you and your soul. So just to wrap this up, we'll go back to finishing this chapter. So the American Dream. Chapter 9, March 9th, 1933, a day that will go down in infamy. Spoken by Franklin Roosevelt on a different day, but applying more surely to this day too, for on this day, when the Trading with the Enemies Act and the declaration by Congress of the bankruptcy of the United States, a corporation, the American dream became a nightmare instead. I mean, it's still so fresh in the American psyche because it's happened a lot sooner. It happened in the United Kingdom back in, 1694, or whenever it was in the 17th century when the Bank of England crept in and these international banks from Europe did exactly the same what they did to the United States, what you read about, but just 300 years ago. Okay, so America, and obviously because how rich, resourceful America has been, it's obviously been used as the spearhead for Manifest Destiny as a military arm to go and proliferate this clandestine New World Order across the world. Okay, and there's another good book that you guys should read, I highly recommend, which I'll bring up, which is Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And this will basically give you a breakdown of exactly how America, with the IMF and the World Bank and all their sub-corporations, were able to go and basically get everyone under debt with these loans that they loaned out to all these developing countries, which then were designed to default. And this guy was one of those guys who actually went there to get into contract with these agencies in order to take on these loans that were designed to default after 5 or 10 years, in which case they had to come and demand their pound of flesh, and were able to take a portion of their resources. This is all like South America, the Middle East, even down in Indonesia. Okay, this was going on, so they can build their military bases there and have basically surveillance and just the American presence there clandestinely on their soil, and basically own them, have them in their pocket because they owe them money because they defaulted on their debt, and the debt was always sexed up to help aid in whoever was in power at the time to better their nation with infrastructure, roads, airports, hospitals, schools, docks, increase in trade, GDP, and it was all sexed up and like, yeah, great, 5 years time you're going to be the most famous president, go down in history, and obviously it was all designed for the manipulation of the interest rates for them to default, which is costing money. They raise the interest rates, all of a sudden they default, they can't pay back the loans, and in sweeps the kind of obligations, right? The pound of flesh, the commandments of, okay, well, if you can't pay us, then we want to be able to build military bases on your soil, want a cut of your resources, your intelligence, everything else that goes on. So this is the title Economic Hitman. They send in the Economic Hitman first. If that doesn't work, they send in the Jackals, which are the CIA assassins, which is what they try to do with Saddam Hussein. If that doesn't work, those two methods, so they try to get him to take one of these fraudulent loans, but they couldn't, to try and indebt him. Then they obviously sent out the Jackals to assassinate. They couldn't do that. Apparently he had like really good body doubles. He'll talk all about it in the book. It's amazing. And if that doesn't work, then the kind of last tactic is a red herring event in order to get the people to consent to go to war, basically. And that's pretty much what you saw happen in Iraq. In order for them to fabricate a story to get the people to consent to sending their troops, which again are just corporate chattel, trustees of the fucking United States corporation or wherever you are, with their dog tags and all capitalized names, right? It's so brainwashed. It's unbelievable that they're fighting on behalf of these Illuminati slave masters. It's sick, but they get away with it. And so that's the tactics they use. So I highly recommend that, and obviously highly recommend watching Money Masters documentary. Really, really good to piece it all together. So slowly but surely, the bankers proceeded to take over the federal court system. The taking over of which is now complete, for federal rules must now be used in state courts. Congress, never having lawfully assembled after Abraham Lincoln dissolved Congress when the southern states walked out during a debate over the Civil War, nor ever having been passed into positive law, is now seated outside of the Constitution, as the court system is as well. This is the reason for registering to vote, for by registering you are given the privilege of voting, and anyone who signs in and votes in the federal elections or in any election is voting as a corporate entity, a strawman, and is agreeing to the presumption that Congress has the authority to act from its foreign jurisdiction. The entire court system is now ruled by and under their foreign jurisdiction flag, which has a gold fringe around the edge and a golden eagle or gold symbol above the flag. And some courts will make a mockery of the United States flag by positioning it in a vertically gathered way rather than set free. The powers that be knew that all commerce is ruled by the law of contracts, better known as the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. No contract, no case. The schools began to teach that any contract you signed is a valid contract that you must fulfill. This saying is true as long as the contract is between two living souls, where the contract is fully disclosed to both parties and both parties agree to the terms by adding their signatures thereto. And that good credit, honest credibility, is the most important thing that you have. Well, a valid contract has 5 parts: offer, acceptance, consideration, signatures of all parties to the contract, signed in wet ink, and 5, full disclosure and mutual understandings of the terms, so lawful terms and conditions. Only the parties that sign the contract can enforce the contract. What's more, a lawyer cannot settle any dispute that may arise from a contract without both parties' consent. The Creator created man with the unalienable right to govern himself and to form a government. Man gave government the right to form corporations. As man has no right to rule his creator, which is God, a government has no right to rule its creator, a man. Okay, this is so key to understand and embody the spirit of. A government can only govern what it creates. Government created a legal fiction to rule by giving it a corporate name and assuming man to be that legal fiction and writing his name in all capital letters with the middle name only an initial or not at all. The proper name for a living soul is written in upper and lowercase letters, the first and middle name being the sovereign name and the last name being the family name. The real name for a living soul is I, me, my, or myself. Government is only a piece of paper, being a creation of mankind. As the government, being a piece of paper, could only create a corporation, which in itself is not able to sign a lawful contract with the living soul. Case in point, show us the land deed for the United States of America, show us the land deed for the United Kingdom, show us the land deed for Canada. It's all on paper. That's the realm that this is all being played out. The two-dimensional fictional realm of paper contracts and procedures. All corporations must have someone to speak for them, and the governments came up with a solution. The lawyer, who has been appointed to speak for all corporations in the courts which they have created. The government then devised an alternate to the lawful contract called the unilateral contract or one signature contract. Their own description of the unilateral contract says that they were probably written up by a lawyer or a group of lawyers to commit fraud with the intent to extort monies from the signers. The lawful problem with these contracts, aside from the fact that they only have the signature of one party to the contract, is that they have many hidden traps about which the party is unaware. In many cases, such as bank contracts or signatures for checking purposes, the contract is never shown to the depositor. All contracts pertaining to corporations signed by a one-party participant are fraud from their conception and are used to extort monies from the people. They cannot be enforced except with our permission or consent by assent. From the beginning, men have the right to contract with whomever or for whatever they so choose. The government then set their court system apart from the Constitution and its people and then invites the people to contract with their court system under their foreign jurisdiction flag to allow them to settle their disputes. Since a person is to the government as a corporation, they treat any living soul who contracts with their court as a corporation as well and as a legal person and a slave or debtor which cannot speak for itself. The first thought that enters the minds of people when they receive a letter from a lawyer saying you have been sued is to hire another lawyer to settle the dispute between the two corporations in their corporate court. The judge protects the lawyers and they in turn protect the court, for they are officers of the court. The system is called a legal system, meaning that what they are doing is legal, legal simply meaning with your consent. After they gain your consent, the system then becomes lawful with your consent for whatever they choose to do to you. Law or lawfulness is constitutional in subject matter, for no law can be enacted or is supposed to be without an enabling clause from the Constitution of the state or from the United States of America. The court does not have a contract with the party until the party gives the judge his or her name. Until that time, the judge is simply an actor in a black robe. Until then, the court is trying to get the party to contract with it under their foreign jurisdiction flag. Since judges do not file their oath of office into their courtroom, they act under administrative law as however they may choose. The laws passed since 1926 have all been signed by the President of the Bar, the British accredited Regency of the State of New York, bringing all laws under the bar as nothing more than bar codes, rules, regulations, statutes, and procedures for the corporations to follow. The only way you have to make the judge uphold his oath is to file his oath into the case and restrict him to the type of law that you want to follow. Subject matter jurisdiction. There are 7 demands for discovery to demand of all lawyers, okay? So we've got 1, produce the legislative act and its implementing regulations that precipitated this cause. 2, produce the legislative act that created the office of lawyer, attorney, counsellor, esquire. Give me the address of his office where I may go and get a license to practice law. 3, produce a copy of your oath of office as an officer of the court and where you filed it into the public record. 4, produce the contract signed by myself, proper name of the living soul, and you, name of the lawyer, in which I agreed to give up my constitutional rights. 5, give me your name, address and phone number. 6, give me your bond number and your bonding company name, address and location. 7, send me an acknowledgement that you understand that you have perjured your oath of office and are committing constructive treason against the Constitution for the United States of America, wherever you are, and the American peace flag. Under this system of consent, a living soul never has to accept the ruling of the court, but they must object at all times to the action being taken. All persons spending time in prison were sent there by their own words. Example, judge says, did you receive a fair trial? Answer, yes. The party's just being railroaded. Did your lawyer fight hard for you? Answer, yes. Do you feel that 12 years is a reasonable sentence? Answer, yes. You just sentenced yourself to prison. This is aided and abetted by the party's lawyer who has just told him to be nice to the judge in the sentence phase of his trial, and tells the party that the judge is probably going to give him a 12-year sentence instead of the 50-year sentence he could get. The other part of the problem is with the laws in today's court, or the total lack of laws. The charge and intent are combined in one charge, so you cannot plead innocent. You must plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest, thereby giving the court jurisdiction over the case. All the courts have been lumped together into one court: administrative, admiralty, civil, contract, commerce. With the caking of your plea, you go administratively under any law they want to use to convict you. In order for a law to be construed as law, it must have an enacting clause from the source the law came from, i.e. king, legislature, etc. All laws proceeding from the state legislatures must have an enacting clause, be it enacted by the legislature or of the state of Maine, for example. A legislature can only introduce a bill, it cannot introduce a law. The bill must go through, be approved unanimously by the House, signed by the leader of the House, be approved by the Senate, signed by the leader of the Senate, approved and signed by the governor, and then the bill becomes law. Now it is checked against the Constitution to find the enabling clause from which it was written. If the Constitution does not allow for the law, then it is void from its inception. Have you ever heard that a party can challenge the enacting part of the law or the subject matter jurisdiction of the matter he or she is being tried for violating at any time of the trial or even upon conviction while in prison? Usually it is not a law that a party is being tried for breaking, but a code, rule or regulation or breach of contract. The proper response to "you have been sued" is the redemption process or rejection, returning their contract unsigned within 3 days in full accord with truth in lending. Never let an attorney or lawyer send you any document without accepting it for value or rejecting it and returning it without a signature in 3 days in full accord with the truth in lending. They may say anything to you in their first letter and you may think it is harmless. A rattlesnake seems harmless and makes a pretty noise, but is deadly when it strikes. Have you ever heard the phrase, "you don't need to respond"? Do not believe it. Respond with the redemption process or reject and return it without a signature in 3 days in full accord with truth in lending. Okay, so if you just leave it, silence is acquiescence, that's one of the maxims, and you'll be contracted and you'll be in dishonour automatically. Okay, so you always have to rebut their claims. Either reject the contract or accept for value for settlement in exchange for your Treasury Direct account. Don't contract with third parties, tell them to get lost, tell them that they are fired. We now understand that the government gains power of attorney over us when we are born, and they take our birth certificates and make negotiable instruments out of them. We now know that through the Social Security Administration and the issuance of the Social Security number, or whatever the equivalent is in your country, we are recorded as a trust, and the living soul is made the trustee instead of the executor that you should be of the strawman trust that they created. We now have our own power of attorney, in fact, and we now know which forms to fill out for taxes. Already we have one when you come back to life and know how to play the game with your status correction, etc. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there, guys. He otherwise goes on in Redemption Timeline, chapter 10, breaking down, what actually happened, which actually we might as well just finish off real quick, and then we'll call it, and you guys can read through the rest in your own time. Okay, which is very beneficial. I encourage you guys to do that. So it goes into the importance of maxims and how we can rely on that in jurisdiction when trying to find remedy with the courts, proverbs of law, and then go straight into all of the maxims. Okay, which is very, very good. And these are obviously just kind of notes as well as to how to play the game, which I highlighted a few of them that you can go and obviously read through. So we'll just go back to the Redemption Timeline, chapter 10. Here's what he says. So there have been so many papers written about the redemption process, and yet there seems to be a lack of understanding of the basic concepts. Redemption is the initial path taken by people who know they are free but see no hope in the judicial system as it is practiced today. It's vitally important to understand how the people and the government turned our lives upside down and have made us believe that we are subject to them, when in reality they are subject to us. Every being is part and parcel of we the people. Okay, so the key points Number one, 1871, the federal government formed itself into a corporation and pulled itself out from under the Constitution. 1913, the Federal Reserve central banks were created. 1933, President Roosevelt rewrote and reinstituted Trading with the Enemies Act of 1917. This applies only to 14th Amendment citizens of the federal United States, which is otherwise persons. Okay, if you go to 28 US Code 3002, if you look under one of their subsections, it says what the definition of persons is, which means a corporation. Okay, and that's a 14th Amendment citizen. 4. In 1933, President Roosevelt took the gold away from the people, although they were not required to give it away, thereby leaving the people without money for paying their debts. 5. In 1933, President Roosevelt passed HJR 192 of June 5th. Simply put, since the government had taken the gold and the people had no money, the government will pay the debts for the people dollar for dollar, thereby giving the people unlimited credit. In 1938, Erie Railroad versus Tompkins made contracts the rule of law in our courts. Number 7. In 1946, we lost our government and courts through the Administrative Procedures Act. Number 8. In 1965, silver was taken away as a means for paying debt. The UCC became the supreme law for America concerning the banking system, and the courts were pulled together in administrative, admiral, civil, contract or commerce corporation, and the act and intent were brought together, thereby taking away any plea of innocence. You have to now prove there was no intent, guilty until proven innocent, changing the often quoted phrase, you are innocent until proven guilty. Okay, so this is what they've been getting up to. All right, and so that's why America is so key if you are anywhere else in the world as a foreign national to gain access to your trust, because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. And I believe for the New World Order, if they're successful, what they're going to do is have everyone adopt the US dollar, and all debts will be governed and obviously administered using the US dollar. So they always have to provide remedy and leave the doors open for remedy, otherwise it'll be treason. This is why for the 1099 process we can file our tax returns, because everything is just otherwise a tax issue, right? Because that's how the corporations make their money and revenue in order to pay the interest due on the loans that come due for the international banksters and the governments who are under bankruptcy. So when we do our tax returns, we can actually return our credit back to the source in order to have it settled and closed and zeroed out. Okay, and that means that everything that's otherwise been debited from your account can otherwise be credited and balanced back. Okay, so it's all prepaid, and that was the benefit of what they pledged to us under HJR 192, and they took away our ability to pay in gold and silver, and instead gave us debts dollar for dollar for them to be able to pay for us using our unlimited credit, our unlimited exemption, because they're constantly drawing money from an account with zero balance. It is unlimited, it's infinite, it's eternal. Okay, the sky is really the limit. When you sign a loan document, you've just created money in the money supply from an account with zero balance, just from a few enters in the keyboard. And off the back of that, they fractional reserve lend that out 9 times to the power of 9. It goes on and on and on, which is why inflation as well, through the use of this increase in the money supply, is a stealth tax that's also eroding our wealth. So once you come back to life, got all your papers and your status corrected, and you have good understanding of the trust law, the corporate law, that all laws consent, know how to stand on your own 2 feet and operate in the world of commerce and the world of fact, in that sense, the common law, the natural worlds, and have all the entities set up, like your trusts, your ministry, and obviously your LLCs, your operating companies. If you're making profit, you can actually put in declarations and have everything you otherwise register within their system, and just send a notice to the Vatican and the United Nations that you wish to have everything that's otherwise registered in the public domain with the Secretary of State or wherever you are in the world, and have them recognised as a disregarded entity, which means that all income or so-called derived profit for these for-profit corporations you have registered that administering your business can be treated as if they are personal income tax returns, which means that if you are claiming to be a sovereign, a living man or being with unlimited liability, then they can't contract with you, and then you'll be tax exempt. You'll be able to have tax exempt status, and if you even simply say that, state that on your declaration, that becomes the law, and you give an opportunity to rebut it, and they don't. And this is what I've proven with many things, claiming many things in this life: diplomat status, innocent until proven guilty. All these subject matter jurisdictions, you send into them, you've got to notify them on your 4 corners. That is your rights. That's where all your rights are reserved. Okay, so it's so important to go away, learn about these things, keep studying, and then get to the point of when you know what game's being played on the legal and lawful side, integrate that with what's happened with the money, And then you'll be able to start seeing how you can start doing your own tax returns to source in order to claim back the credits that are owed to you. Okay, because you are the creator of all the credit that's in this economy. And it's about time we start claiming that and actually helping them out by discharging the debts dollar for dollar, or pound for pound, or wherever you are in the world. Okay, and it just requires a bit of studying. Obviously on my course, you've got the 1099 module, go through that. That's going to help break down exactly what is going on in that regard with the money and how we can file taxes, which is otherwise just the money. Everything's a tax issue. Every court is otherwise a tax court, because that's how the company makes money and revenue, is through taxing the people. That's why they need to fine us, lien us, levy us, and tax us from cradle to grave, because they got interest payments to pay off on loans that are drawn from an account with zero balance, where there's only ever the principal amount in the economy in the first place in the money supply to pay it off. So if they record all of their debts and paid off the principal plus the interest, there's not enough money to pay off the interest. They can only ever get rid of the principal. Can you see where I'm coming from with this? And another good, what I recommend in order to help embed this into your consciousness, is another great documentary by Mike Maloney. I think it's episode 4, Biggest Scam. You'll see, here it is. Go away and watch this video, and he breaks it down for you with diagrams and the whole spiel of what's going on with this monetary system. It's all fraud, and how they create money off the back of your pledge of life through these SETI KB trusts, right? Your social security strawman trusts, because you've signed up for the benefits and privileges of a system that's otherwise got you down as just collateral, mere security for all the debt that they need to pay back on behalf of these international banks. So it's time to come back to life and literally say no more, what David Robinson rightfully put in his book. Okay, so you've got that, guys. Anyone on the course obviously going to have a link to access this themselves. If you're watching this on YouTube, then I highly recommend heading over to my website, where you'll be able to gain access to my course, find out more information, agmiddleditch.com. Okay, but you can see, just go on Amazon. He's got a list of really good books. I recommend, Be the One, Execute Trust, no more than $10. Give Yourself Credit's another good one, and he's got quite a few there, so he's very advanced. The UCC Connections worth reading too. Okay, so I highly recommend those guys for those on the journey of becoming a sui juris. Right, thank you so much for your time. Hope it didn't bore you too much. Like I said, recommend going away and reading this book. It's so simply put, well written, not too complicated, just breaks everything down perfectly. Commercial system, all laws consent, trust laws are those corporate law, and remembering who we are and having the ability to play the game. It's not an easy journey. It does require a lot of research and study, a couple of years minimum, in order to really get to that position where you feel confident in learning how to administer your own estate. But we must go back to school, and that's why I created this course. That's why I'm on this journey. That's why so many other people on this journey, likewise yourself watching this. Just got to stay patient, keep chipping away. We're all going to help pull each other up in education, in liberation, and force change within the system. Because like it said, once we remove ourselves from providing them with the revenue, which is keeping this fucking machine turning, we can dry it up and stop it from spinning and turning and making it turn the other way in our favor. And it's all down to us putting pen to paper and remembering who we are and learning how to administer our own trust. Be the one to execute your trust. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, stay safe out there, take care, study hard, and stay sovereign. Wish you all the best. Speak soon. Ciao.